The time of this recording is 11:30 p.m. Monday, the 19th of January 2026. Unlike previously planned, this coffee hour will also be recorded by script. This is due to the nature of events that have taken place, and my difficulty in wording them on the fly. Much like the old coffee hour series, it appears that the Dark Age relaunch will be subject to story time of insanity. Given circumstances, this may turn out to be a very short venture, however. On December 26, I woke up to find my grandmother on the floor of her room partially unresponsive. She had had a stroke, and the aftermath of this incident is not resolved, and may never resolve well. This was an avoidable incident. The incompetence of our healthcare system played a strong part in this. This also isn't the first time in recent memory the incompetence of our healthcare system cost someone enormously. In fact, someone I know died due to the neglect of our healthcare system around a year or so ago. As it is, my grandmother has stabilized somewhat and recovered the ability to swallow, talk, and most of her mental faculties, though hallucinations are still prominent. She has been through surgery, is now beginning the long road to rehabilitation so that she might one day hopefully be able to return home. She is very lucky. Very, very lucky. But even minor strokes, especially in the elderly, can mandate months, if not years, of rehabilitation, and the survival rate just for a few months after the stroke is extremely low. We live on existence minimum, and we're thousands of dollars in debt due to the cost of food and water, and our rent and insurance are both about to skyrocket even further. If anything gets even slightly worse, and she ends up in a care home, or worse yet suffers another stroke or death, it will sink us both. There are no safety nets and no fallbacks. Suffice to say, the last 3 weeks have been a nightmare comparable to the deaths of my cats, and all projections offered for future work in the last coffee hour have henceforth been abandoned. I haven't given up the ambition of attempting to make a commercial game project, but the specifics of what I'd like to make are not so easy to decide upon now, mostly due to discovering the limitations of the assets available. I have released some Naraka video, and I've placed small amounts of time in some other projects, but everything is effectively deadlocked until the situation resolves. Even so, a stroke is a life-changing event for all people involved. As a primary caretaker who has spent almost 30 years looking after disabled, dying animals and people, dementia patients, and so on, the limits of my psychological endurance have been tested and surpassed time and time again. I am once more a full-on insomniac, unable to function for most of the day. Stress is pounding my already very high resting blood pressure and very weak heart. As it is, I have been strongly considering cancelling my D&D adventures. If the worst comes to pass, then I will very likely disappear for good. I refuse to live a life even harder and more chaotic and noisy than it already is. I want to continue my work. But manage your expectations. This is yet another brick in the 13-year road of utter hell that has consumed my life. It may be the last. It certainly has that gravity to it. An extremely important decision must be made. If I am to attempt to create a commercial product, something that I will likely spend several years bare minimum working on, and attempt to sell this product, what stands the highest chance of success? What stands the highest chance of holding my interest long enough to take it through what will be a very difficult process of acquiring and creating assets for it? The primary reason why I considered doing a shooter is because I don't have to worry about a player character asset. I would likely just use Bugramov's FPS arms and be done with it. Maybe I need FPS legs. whatever. If I make a third-person project, I would effectively just be remaking Apex X. Therefore, it would be the exact same problems I have with it currently in terms of the player character that I don't have a solution for. And that solution is never going to just come. That would be the number one thing to deal with. On the other hand, with that kind of a project, I already have all the pre-existing game systems created for it. I have decided that for the world progression, I will simply create a world in the vein of a Castlevania map from Symphony of the Night, something fairly large and linear, but governed in part through my randomization engine I made early in 2025 and discussed in previous video productions. And then I will use the inventory system I had hypothesized recently as well. This, coupled together with an ability system tied into it, should allow me to close the gaps acceptably for my first venture. I feel like the third-person action project would be the highest chance of success because this is something I'm the most comfortable creating, whereas a shooter requires a large number of animations that actually just plainly don't exist, period. In both projects, I'll need to get into Sequencer or Animation Control Rig to try to create my own animations. But the former, the FPS production, would be the most difficult to do so for, because in all likelihood, all I need to do for the third-person project is just adjust existing animations for monsters. But creating entirely new first-person animations is definitely going to be too difficult to do in any short amount of time, if I could do it at all. This is going to be a very critical turning point because there really won't be much turning back. I can recycle certain systems between the two projects, but I want to get started on the player-facing stuff first. But I am faced with extreme indecision. I don't know what is the best decision. I don't know what I should try to focus on the most. Neither of them is going to be easy, and there will be challenges I won't be able to foresee. Should I rely on what is tried and true, and try to tackle the age-old theme of the player character asset? Or should I venture in something that I really have no grounding, no understanding, and no real basis to go off of, believing that because it's a different kind of viewpoint, and I have to sidestep the player character asset, it'll suddenly be easier? I don't know. But that's a decision I now make. I will have plenty of time to consider this decision, as I don't plan on getting started anytime soon. Not because I don't want to, but because the stress is just simply too overwhelming to even begin to think about building something. Just about all of the assets I am using for the monsters have been ported. Even though I've remastered them, and they're effectively transformative works, the fact remains they all need to be replaced. Every single last one. Roughly half the sound effects also need to be replaced. And the reason why I'm using them is because I don't have access to anything else that's suitable, but is royalty-free or acceptable for commercial use. In other words, I'm probably going to have to get extensively into sound engineering again, and I'm gonna have to find commercially usable graphics assets that would make suitable replacements. But there's a reason why I'm using a lot of these old ported assets other than convenience. It's because nothing exists that suits what I wanted for them. There is nothing out there that would suit the Night Dweller as it is. I wanted something relatively close to what I used in Autumn Wind, but there's nothing really like that. And most third-party assets are incredibly overpriced and have extremely shitty animations. Honestly, it's a disaster and stresses me out even thinking about it. But that's the road I am now considering. Beyond that, I don't know what awaits. It's very possible I may even try to open up something related to donations. I have spent some amount of time researching how anonymous donations may be made for the handful of individuals who have asked me over the years if such a thing is possible to obtain. So far, I am not very encouraged. It seems like the only way to do so would be to create an LLC or something similar. But this doesn't protect the identities of donors, only me. Beyond using something like cryptocurrency, which is a meme at best and not something I can actually make any use out of, I don't know where to go from that point. But I can make a small amount of money without affecting my disability. It just adds a whole new level of annoyance for tracking and reporting those earnings. Beyond that, nothing can be said for the future. And all one can hope is that there is any kind of future at all. I know the one thing that I want at this point is a home. That is what I want first and foremost. Not a stopgap, not a temporary location, but an actual home. Something that I own, something that belongs to me. The very dream the Western world is trying its best to destroy, and has been doing so for years. I will deny that hostility to the independent life, even if it is only through aspirations alone.